Director of Data at MEF. What does that mean in terms of data? I mean, what we do is sort of collate data that we think is important for the members and the industry and try and push it back out to you. And this is what we sort of look at. There's three parts of MEF data that I'll sort of talk through very, very quickly because this is what we're going to be looking at today. So mobile ecosystem data. We cover about 218 markets worldwide. We get information from about 170 regulators of varying degrees of granularity. And what we're looking at is the total connections in market, the users in market, the devices in market, what those devices are, what versions they are, because that then becomes important when we start looking at things like RCS, what version Android, what version iOS. MNO market shares, have they got 2G, 3G, have they sunset it, lots of information. On the other side of the chart, we've got consumer survey information. Now, we've been doing this for 11 years now. It's the biggest piece of research that we do within MEF. The 15 markets that you see here, we did last year, I mean, together are, I think, about 55% of the global population, 60% of active mobile users and 65% of connected users. There are hundreds of questions that we run in this survey. There's thousands of answer variables. What we'll be concentrating on today is obviously the mobile messaging side of that. It's what people are doing in P2P, A2B, and omni-channel experience. This year, we actually added in 2 more markets as well. We added in Poland and Turkey, and we try and sort of push in new markets each year. You can see there's not many, in fact, there's no Nordic markets in here, but this year we will be sort of moving to include some Nordic markets as well. And then in the middle, business messaging. So we used to do this in a collaboration with a commercial organization. We no longer do that, but what we are doing is trying to find out as best we can from our members and from my background as well, sort of in business messaging analysis, exactly what's happening. Because you can speak to, Google aren't here, so we can speak to Google, you can speak to MNOs, you can speak to aggregators, and you get completely different views on what's happening in the market, how big it is, what the reach is, what the volumes are. So what we're doing now is working with all the members, anonymizing their data, aggregating it, and pushing it back out there. So hopefully there is something that we can all sort of rely on. So that's MEF data. Who was with us in Stockholm last year? Okay, quite a few of you. Okay. So last year, we started with some literary criticism. We're looking at what is mobile messaging, what is rich mobile messaging, and the idea that it's a tale of two cities. Starts in Paris, where people took up arms, stormed the Bastille, execute Louis XVI, and bloody revolution ends the status quo. Then moves to London, where people favoured more gradual reform and compromise. There was no real opposition, and the status quo was maintained. So what was Dickens trying to tell us? If you were here last year, you know what he was trying to tell us. He was using the monarchy as a metaphor for messaging, wasn't he? Of course he was. Paris was P2P, and London was A2P. So bloody revolution, OTT impact on P2P messaging, status quo, little change at all on the A2P side in most markets. In most markets, there are a couple of exceptions. I was trying to think what's changed since last year. What are the big changes? So Apple has come on board now. Apple now has turned on RCS support in some markets, not in the Nordics. Some more MNOs have launched RBM, not in the Nordics. So very little has really changed. It's still pretty much the same situation. Carrier P2P is pretty much gone. A2P is still largely on SMS. And this is largely mirrored in the sort of data I'm going to sort of run through now. So P2P messaging. This is from the surveys that I've been running. I've looked at the current results and the last 5 years. And on P2P, you can see the shift that we've noticed in almost every market worldwide that we look at. Carrier-based P2P is moving to OTTs. The top 3 mobile messaging channels here are all rich OTTs, and all the growth in P2P is coming from the rich side. 5 channels here, all outperforming SMS. So there's an obvious shift in how people communicate with each other, and that's being mirrored as well in how they would prefer to communicate with brands and businesses. Now this is prefer. So this is what consumers would prefer to happen. Again, we see WhatsApp leads. It actually overtook A2P SMS last year as a channel most people would prefer to hear from brands. And again, the growth over the last 5 years on WhatsApp is almost double that of SMS. So you'd be forgiven for thinking that most markets now are awash with rich messaging, that brands have turned their backs on SMS and rich messaging is the dominant force. But this is the reality that we still sort of live with. A2P SMS may be under siege, but it's still very much the line in the jungle. Admittedly, it might have a thorn in a paw or two, but it's still the dominant force. So this is the percentage share of total messaging, SMS, WhatsApp, and RCS over the last 5 years. So A2P SMS has lost about 15 percentage points over that period, but still around 85% of the total. And total SMS volumes over this period have actually gone up 30 or 40%. Now, growth has obviously slowed, and this year probably will be flat or up a bit, down a bit, depending where you are. And overall volumes are now down in some markets. Rich messaging is coming. Hyperscalers are moving elsewhere, at least for authentication. So it's not hard to imagine that this blue line, the A2P SMS, will actually fall quite sharply in the next few years, especially if you add on then other channels. We've got Viber, Telegram, Messenger, TikTok now as well, national platforms in Asia like WeChat, Line, KakaoTalk, Zalo. So let's concentrate on the rich carrier messaging side of this and the market for RCS. So we covered 218 markets. In those 218 markets that we cover, there are 663 live MNOs. Now, that's not including MVNOs, that's the MNOs, and it's not counting all of the operators in North America, just the big ones. So 663. Of those, we've got 123 are now signed up with Google for RBM. 11 on other platforms. 529 MNOs, that's 80% of the total, do not have RBM. Or put another way, 80% are still relying only on A2P SMS. So it's, what now, I don't know, 11, 12, 13 years since the first RCS networks were launched in Spain. And outside of 20 or 25 golden markets where RBM is available on all operators, we're still largely talking about the idea of RCS, what it can do, opposed to what it's actually done. And despite 130 odd deployments here in about 58 countries. And traffic is predominantly focused in 2, 3, maybe 4 markets. So if RCS is the way forward for carrier messaging, then at some point, the 80% of MNOs here have to act. They've got to do something. I mean, otherwise, they're going to have to stock up on tin food because there is a juggernaut approaching. So we need to accelerate MNO adoption, onboarding, drive scale. This is reach. So RBM reach of total RCS is a lot better. So those 20% of MNOs with RBM are actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Total mobile users is the line at the top. That's actual users, not connections. And at the bottom, we've got where RCS is available everywhere on relevant devices. And then the lighter blue is RBM, where MNOs have signed with Google, have an agent, and commercial traffic. And you can see we've gone from around 52% RBM penetration in 2020 to about 72% last year. There's a drop in the middle where India shut off. You can see where Google sort of hits 1 billion users. The difference is mainly sort of China, Japan, South Korea. But total RCS reach is still less than half of total users, and RBM about 3/4 of that. Traffic. So the notable exceptions talked about earlier. These are 2 of them, or these are the notable exceptions. We've got India and Brazil. So Indian users, RCS, WhatsApp, both very, very active in India. They didn't really go down the basic route because users there were used to rich messaging with WhatsApp, so bypassed basic largely. And now we're seeing not only is SMS traffic migrating to both WhatsApp and to RCS, but due to pricing, we've got WhatsApp traffic also now migrating to RCS. And as part of the role that we're trying to do in aggregating data, anonymizing, feeding back to the market, we can see that the number one RCS provider, CPaaS operator, aggregator, what we're going to call it, sent around 10 billion messages in 2024, primarily in India. That's the largest provider of RBM, 10 billion. And total volumes in India were approximately about 13 billion. It's grown 29 times over the last 18 months. And that was primarily on Vodafone Idea. And we've now got Jio launched as well. I think Jio by April had done about 5 billion. So India's grown quite strong. Brazil had a bit of a false start, went back, built up on basic, and is now moving brands there up the value chain to single conversations, carousels. And the second largest provider of RBM worldwide sent about 2.5 billion messages, all in Brazil. And total volumes in Brazil with other providers there take up to about 4 billion. Brazil's grown 97 times over the last 18 months. Then we've got the rest of the world. It's about another 7 billion or so. So total volumes on RBM, 24, 25 billion. And these two markets contribute about 70% of total RBM and total WhatsApp as well. So both channels have great reach in these markets and without Apple yet. So we now have 8 markets where RCS for Business nominally has 100% reach. It's across Apple and Android, which is great. We've got 100% reach. It isn't 100% reach. So 2 examples here. This is France and Germany. So in France, we've got a total of 78 million handset connections, 71 million on broadband smartphones. Of those, we've got 50 million Android, 20 million Apple. The RCS reach on the installed Android base is only about 56, 57%. Apple goes up quite a lot because of the delay in updating iOS 18. So initially, you've got on the top there what it was. This is Apple devices on iOS 18, 18.1, 18.2. So in 4Q, it was about 42%, it's going up to 72%, and now it's about 79%. So with Apple, you can see that we've got, I think, 27% initially, when Orange still hadn't come on board in France, to about 73% now. Now, still not including about 8% of the base, which is on MVNOs, and we've got total RCS reach is now 62%. Not 100%, 62% of broadband, and 56% of handsets. Apple generating about a third of the total, despite only having about 29% market share. In Germany, 100-odd million connections, 95 million smartphones, and of those, we've got 62 million on Android, 32 million on Apple, and RCS reach on the installed base there for Android is about 70%. Apple goes up a lot again with the adoption of 18. Much higher MVNO base in Germany, about 24% of the market. And total RCS reach here is 68% of total broadband, 63% of total handsets. So Apple's, again, about a third. But we're still way off ubiquity that we have with SMS. And RCS messaging is now growing in these markets as brands see the benefit of moving. But it's really SMS with a rich cherry on top. It's still basic. They are moving with the value chain. But we're still nowhere near 100% with Android and Apple. So this is something that we've just published in MEF, positioning paper. You can download it if you want from our website, and it's outlining basically what's going on in RCS product positioning, messages for brands and aggregators, all to help drive reach, drive scale, and move brands across to this sort of richer environment. So as well as this, we're also trying to start focusing on an RCS-first strategy to try and mandate that RCS becomes the primary messaging channel. You can speak to Nick. Nick will tell you more about that. He's sort of running that working group. And we want to make sure that your voice is included in that. So take part in the working group, tell us what you think, and we can move it all forward. So what are the lessons from all of this that we can sort of look at in terms of the Nordic markets? And this is that you should tickle each other and laugh. So Mr. Tickle, reach. RCS is only going to work if there's reach, which means you need Apple support for RCS. iPhones are about 50% of the total market here in the 4 markets we're looking at, pushing 60% in Norway, I think 58% in Denmark, 55% in Sweden, Finland predominantly Android, but still about a quarter of devices are on iOS. And secondly, we need to be clever in terms of pricing. Use basic RCS to transition brands, so prices on a par with SMS. Don't start that, multiple times, move them up to multiple times. So be clever, and then move people up the value chain. So this is looking at the total of the 4 markets. Total connections, you can see, have grown about 10%. All that growth is really coming from M2M. Handsets are largely flat. We've got 124% population penetration already, so there's not going to be much more growth. Smartphones are already about 97% of that, so there's not much growth there. So RCS, based on the average reach we've seen in France and Germany, is now about 10 million or so, which is only 28% of total handset connections in these markets, but with the potential for another 14.5 if Apple turns on support, which grows it to about 24 million, 25 million. It's about 70% reach, which is good. Slightly different picture in each market, notably Finland, but need Apple. Look at the time, I'm sort of, see it's running out, so very quickly, all of this will be available, but I don't need to go through it. We've looked at Denmark, Norway, Sweden and Finland. You can see here what happens when you add on Apple. This again is based on iOS 18 availability. You can add, Denmark could add another nearly 4 million RCS reach with Apple. Finland, another 1.5. Norway, another 3 million or so. And finally, Sweden, with about another 6 million if Apple turns on support, which we presume it will at some point. So I hope all of that sort of provides some context for today, or some information that maybe didn't have. It is all available. Any questions? I'm here, Nick's here. Happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you.